Okay, so I am a huge fan of the White Lotus. I have waited every single season very impatiently because I am addicted to this show. I love it so much. And when season 3 was announced, I was very hype. I marked my calendar. And now that it's over, I'm very sad. And this season left a lot of fans very split. Some people really liked it, and some people really hated it. I've never seen more mixed feelings towards a show. It was kind of weird. And what I wanted to do in today's video is kind of quickly go through. I tried recording this once and it was a very long video, but I kind of quickly want to go through and touch on some of the characters, what happens to them, so obvious spoilers ahead, and talk about some principles and how it ties into, in some cases, some Buddhist principles and teachings. I'm not an expert in Buddhism, so if I butcher something, I apologize. But I did a lot of research because Buddhism is obviously very prevalent throughout this season. I mean, they're in Thailand. There's a lot of statues of Buddha, mentions of Buddha, quotes of Buddha. Like it was very clearly tied in. They're not hinting at it. And so I'm just going to jump into the video. I'll leave timestamps down below, and I'm going to group the characters by association so it makes it a little easier. And again, I'm just going to touch on them briefly so the video isn't 20-30 minutes long because I know nobody wants to sit through and watch all that. So I'm going to start with Rick and Chelsea because I feel like they were the most interesting of the plot lines and kind of the one that drove the story forward. So I saw them kind of as the anchor that everything was sort of happening around, and that's why I wanted to start with them. And I also just love Walton Goggins. I thought his name was Walter Goggins for a long time, but his name's Walton Goggins, who plays Rick. He's an absolute brilliant actor. I'm a huge fan of his. And I wasn't as familiar with Amy Lou Wood, who plays Chelsea, until this show, but obviously she's a phenomenal actress and she did a great job. And so to get into their fate, obviously, so throughout the entire season, Rick is obsessed with this man, Jim Hollinger, who he believes murdered his father. And his entire essence is just, I want revenge against this man. Not necessarily murder, because when he does confront him originally, he just kind of tells him off, kicks over a chair that he's in, and then leaves. And in that moment, Rick actually gets some clarity, and he becomes this totally different character that I love to see. He was happy, he was enjoying himself, he was actually nice to Chelsea. Throughout most of the season, he's pretty indifferent towards Chelsea. You know, she's being very sweet, she loves him, and he's just kind of like, yeah, cool, sure, yeah, do whatever you want, because he's so obsessed with finding this man who greatly affected his life. And in the end, Rick just can't let it go. You know, he thought he could, but then he actually runs into Jim right before he's about to leave at the villa. Jim confronts him and says something in very poor taste about his mother, which is obviously very personal. And then he says something very interesting about the fact that Rick didn't miss out on much when it came to his father. And in that moment, I knew that was his father because of the way he said it. A lot of people were speculating, as well as myself, that that was his father all along. But we obviously got confirmation after Rick goes ahead and grabs the gun out of Jim's side pocket that he has a holster and shoots and kills Jim. And then that ensues all the craziness. And unfortunately, the one character who absolutely did not deserve to die ends up dying in the crossfire, which is Chelsea. And we do learn that that was Rick's father right after he shoots him. And so to get into some of the principles and some of the ideas here, I think it's very clear with Rick that we have attachment and suffering. So a core teaching that a lot of people know that aren't even within the faith of Buddhism know that Buddhism is very much about letting go. And I think it's very well illustrated because when Rick does let go, he has such peace. Again, he's a different character. And there's this moment with Chelsea. All Chelsea wanted the entire season was Rick. She just wanted to love Rick. She's a very deep lover. And there's a moment when they're staying together and Chelsea says something like, you know, we're going to be together forever. And Rick in his very clear mind, after letting go, says that's the plan. There's this super cute moment where Chelsea her face just lights up and she's so happy. And so I think it's showing us that if he had actually learned to let go, that maybe things would have been fine. And I also think obviously karma is a big thing here as well. Karma for his violence that he creates against people in the villa. And so a very sad ending, especially for Chelsea. I did not want her to die, but very well done, and I will miss those characters very much. So now I want to move on to the Ratliff family very quickly. So Timothy, obviously the entire season, which by the way, Jason Isaacs does a phenomenal job as Timothy. I want to say that. A lot of people were sort of giving him a hard time because every episode he was sort of playing the same character, the same emotions. But I think he did a great job displaying a very real scenario that could happen to someone in real life where, you know, you've done something, whether it be intentional, whether it be unintentional, you're in a lot of trouble, you have no clue how to deal with it. He's trying to cope. He's on vacation with his family. And every episode, he's basically contemplating taking his own life. And what he learns through many different conversations is that his family in general can't handle being poor, can't handle losing everything, which is what he's facing due to the trouble that he's in. And that goes especially for Victoria, so his wife. I would say it goes for Saxon. Lockie, he has a conversation with in the last episode, and Lockie says he'd be fine, which I do believe. Lockie's a very interesting character, but I do believe he'd be okay. Piper, we think, would be okay because her entire thing this season is, hey, I came here for this thesis. It wasn't very real. She just wanted to come and work here. And after staying a night in a monastery, she learns that she is a very spoiled child. And she has this, great monologue that she delivers, which is, I think, brilliant, where she just absolutely breaks down and realizes that she cannot live this life because Victoria's asking her, obviously, how the stay went. She was hoping it would go bad, which it did. So Piper breaks down. And so this is one big family that can't handle losing everything. And so Timothy comes to the realization that he needs to not only eliminate himself, but eliminate his entire family as well, which is absolutely crazy. And so he creates this pina colada cocktail full of the seeds of a fruit that are poison. We learned that in the very first episode. And it was definitely heavily foreshadowed that someone was going to use those seeds. And I thought it was going to be Timothy in the end, but he tries to do it on his entire family. And ultimately, he can't bring himself to actually watch them consume the poison. He knocks the drink out of Saxon's hand and says something about the coconut milk being off. And so he's very adamant about it. He doesn't clean the blender. So the next morning, obviously, Lockie wakes up and very oddly, very grossly uses the used blender to make a protein shake and consumes it, basically dies. And I think he has one of the most beautiful deaths in really any TV show that I've seen. It's absolutely beautiful the way they did it. And kind of selfishly, I wish he had almost stayed dead. Not because I wish that upon the character, but because I feel like it would have brought very real consequences to Timothy. And again, just the death in general was such a beautiful depiction. And so, very interesting tie in there. I was confused how he was able to consume that much poison and still live, and how the others were able to consume some of the poison and still live. Because if you make a protein shake and you put a certain ingredient in there, like seeds or whatever, a lot of times they get stuck at the bottom. So the fact that he consumed the bottom of the shake makes me believe that he would have consumed a huge portion of that poison, and somehow he still is alive, which I don't know. I thought that was a slight plot hole that they created there. And the obvious principles that are taught here, and especially driven by the director, are attachment. So they have huge attachments to earthly possessions, which is, again, a huge thing in Buddhism, where you're supposed to give up your earthly possessions, and this family just cannot. And, they are the classic, very rich family who just love what they have, and they love being rich. And so, interesting ending for this family. Saxon, I feel like, was one of the best written characters with one of the best arcs this season. And he developed, I think, very real feelings for Chelsea. And in that scene on the beach where he looks over his shoulder and sees Chelsea embracing Rick, there's very real pain in his eyes. And I'm very sad, obviously, that Chelsea passed away, because if it had just been Rick, maybe in some way Chelsea would have found Saxon. But the material that she gave Saxon to read, I'm hoping that he uses and really becomes a much better person. Okay, I'm getting really long in the video here. Okay, Jacqueline, Kate, and Lori. So very maybe controversial opinion here, but I'm actually kind of sad how this ended. So they all sit around a table at the end and basically make up. So, Jacqueline's talking about how much fun she had, and Lori basically breaks down and is very honest and says she's been very sad all week, says why she's been sad. And again, she delivers a beautiful monologue where she says something about Jacqueline having a very beautiful face, Kate having a very beautiful, I can't remember if it's like beautiful spirit or beautiful life. I think it's beautiful life. Then she, again breaks down, but she eventually says that she loves them. And I was hoping for more of a development that Lori would basically come full circle and realize that these aren't really her friends. These aren't really people who are looking out for her, especially Jacqueline. And that she would basically say, look, this is over after this. That's what I was hoping for. But we didn't get that. And in terms of tying it in here, I just wrote down impermanence, because Lori's epiphany about time, which is what she says, aligns with the Buddhist view that life is transient. And so, she says something like not needing God, but she needs time. And again, that whole monologue I thought was very beautiful. And then super quickly, I can't get to everyone, but to just touch on Belinda and her son. So Belinda goes through the entire season and she meets an individual named Pornchai. I hope I'm saying that correctly. I can't remember how she specifically pronounced it, but she meets this individual named Pornchai, and she, I think, genuinely falls for him. They have a connection. They want to open up a business together. But she's obviously, overlooking her shoulder the entire season because Greg, who was in the previous season, is there. And Belinda and Zion, her son, end up striking a deal with Greg to take a large sum of money, $5 million. And interestingly, Belinda kind of does to Pornchai what Tanya did to Belinda. Ish. Not like one for one, but if you remember, Tanya promised to help Belinda open up a business, and then ultimately she just kind of goes like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that, and then leaves. And in this case, Belinda and Pornchai have, again, I think a very real connection. I know Belinda's been through a lot, but I think especially Pornchai was very honestly into her on a spiritual level, and she just kind of up and leaves him once she gets the money, which I think ties into money being very corrupting. And I think they used this as a very clear example of greed. Greed, obviously, with the main family of the show, but greed here as well, because Belinda, her choice to take the money reflects, again, kind of an attachment to security and earthly possessions. And then Greg is still alive. So that's kind of stinks. So anyway, this is one of my longer videos, so I want to wrap it up. Obviously, I could have made this a 30-minute video, and I kind of wish I had. But please let me know in the comments what you think about the ending to the season and maybe what you're looking forward to the next season. So I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you in the next video.